On January 24th, 1995, Local H released their debut album, Ham-Fisted. Although it was received fairly well by critics, it failed to sell, which nearly cut the band's career short. But how did it come to be? And how was it really? Has it aged like wine? Or like milk? That's what I'm here to find out. Join me on this journey into history. From the small town of Zion, Illinois, founded by a minister and home to, at the time, roughly 19,000 people, one of whom was, at one point, Gary Coleman, Local H's origins can be traced back to a bunch of high school friends. Guitarist and vocalist Scott Lucas, drummer Joe Daniels, and bassist Matt Garcia played together in a band or two. I've seen the name Rude Awakening mentioned, although Garcia himself mentioned a band called Family Cruisers, before reuniting briefly in 1989 and officially coming together as a quartet in 1990, joined by guitarist John Sparkman. Lucas was the one who brought the name Local H to the group. Although some speculated a reference to heroin, the truth is much more innocent. Lucas pulled the name from two R.E.M. songs, Oddfellows Local 151 and Swan Swan H. The four played together for a bit before Sparkman left the band sometime before April of 1991. Now a trio once more, they recorded a motley assortment of demos dubbed Scratch. As they continued to play over the next few months, they got louder, heavier, and noisier, according to Garcia, growing out of some of their earlier material in favor of what was to come. The Drum EP was released in '91 and is outdated in terms of the band's sound. Although there are some signs of potential to be heard there, a year later the '92 demos would be released. And here is where the seeds of their first LP were not just planted but growing strong. The band would play quite a few shows during this time, and thanks to great channels like Mark Lage and Gremlin Joke, we can watch a lot of old footage of the band as a three-piece. During the process of writing this, I've lost a fair amount of time going down these rabbit holes, watching these early performances, and from an impartial point of view, they were a mixed bag, which is expected, considering the newness of the group. At times, they're energetic, at others, they plod, and Lucas's vocals do leave something to be desired. In January of 1993, Garcia too would leave the band, leaving Lucas and Daniels alone. They searched for a bassist to replace him, but there weren't many options. And with a set list of songs designed for a three-piece band, they were struggling to play live. In the meantime, they sent out a demo tape containing 4 songs that would later appear on today's record in hopes of garnering some label interest. And what do you know? They got a bite. Now scrambling to figure out how to make a sound big enough to impress the corporate representatives, as well as create the music they wanted to hear, they'd visit an old high school jam buddy named Toby Flesher, who would play the role of Dr. Frankenstein in dissecting a guitar and installing a bass pickup underneath the bottom 2 strings, as well as a separate output that could go into a bass amp. I can let Scott show it off here.
Hi, I'm Scott. I'm Local H. So, what happens is basically there's 2 chords coming out of the guitar. This one, the green one, is for the guitar, and then this one is for the bass. And a friend of mine from Zion looked that up for me, Toby, and it picks up the bottom 2 strings, and that goes directly into the bass. A bunch of pedals down here. It's a mess. And the split that it does to get into the Vox and the matchless. And then over here is all the just go straight to the bass if I want to do that. So, yeah, like I do this to all of my guitars that I get. So I try not to get the greatest, nicest guitars because I'm just going to have to destroy them. You just got to make sure that your root notes are either on the E string or the A string. So you're not going to be able to play like an open D chord. You want to play a 5th fret D chord.
They would take this setup to the stage and impress the crowd enough to get the reps' attention. But when they spoke after the show, the deal fell apart. The label just didn't have faith in a 2-piece. Not discouraged, Local H would continue to play using this setup and would write what they called the definitive Local H song, Cynic. I'll go into more detail on that one later. After listening to Slip, they sent a demo straight to Quicksand's A&R guy Joe Basso at Polydor Records. Their sound caught his ear, and a few weeks later, he would come to see them play live in Chicago. After the show, he signed them on the spot. He told them to re-record some of the demoed songs to try and drum up some interest for his new colleagues, since Polydor was in the middle of a merger with Island Records. It worked. At this time, there was an arms race within the music industry to try to find the next big thing. And the go-to recipe of the era seemed to be grunge. They went into the studio in the summer of '94 and picked out Steve Hagler to produce their first album due to his work on the aforementioned Slip, as well as his work on the Pixies' Doolittle. They headed to North Carolina to record in the same studio that R.E.M. recorded their first 2 records in. Fitting, considering their namesake. Cynic and Mayonnaise and Malaise would be released as singles, and the former would even get a music video directed and edited by Jody Wiley, who had herself worked on R.E.M.'s Find the River video 2 years prior. Quite a few ties to R.E.M. Good omens? Not quite. Our first album sold nothing, said Daniels. Although Lucas said being ignored turned out to be a good thing. Reviews at the time seemed kind. John Young at Newsday called it a spellbinding display of neurotic rock and roll at its finest. Len Rigi at The Morning Call described the album as a metallic punk grunge KO, and the outlet even put it on their list of the best albums of 1995. Jason Arnott would give the album 4 out of 5 stars in Kerrang! Ira Robbins would write in Trouser Press that the album offers an entertaining haymaker of cranked-up, stripped-down 95 noise, as well as saying Lucas and Daniels managed to sound like a full-spectrum band and a 140-proof one at that. Corey Moss wrote a great piece in Iowa State Daily reminiscing not only on Local H playing a concert that got a little too rowdy at a high school, but also of the first time he heard Ham-Fisted and gave it a perfect review. Chaz Thorndike wrote in Lollipop magazine, every song has a fat and fuzzy heavy guitar groove and pounding beats. Robert Christgau would award the album a 3 asterisk rating, which in his own system indicates an enjoyable effort consumers attuned to its overriding aesthetic or individual vision may well treasure. He would write the album was brighter than bleach, less fly than incesticide, clearly referencing Nirvana, and he wasn't alone in that comparison. Moss and Thorndike both mentioned Nirvana in their articles as well, with the former saying, I was informed of the next Nirvana when contacting Polygram distributor Scott White, and the latter saying, there's some definite Cobain influence in the pissy, lo-fi, pop screamers.
Yeah, we love to be compared to Nirvana. Nobody's ever told us that.
Really?
Before, yeah.
It just sounds so full and so big.
Well, we just turn everything up.
Looking back, I'm sort of shocked that Cynic didn't make any waves. The sound is a brilliant attack on the senses, high energy, and features a video that would not have been out of place on MTV. In another universe, I could see myself being scarred as a child by the stop-motion baby robot hybrid featured attacking Los Angeles. But behind the scenes, Basso's colleagues were less than impressed. They didn't care about the reviews, they cared about the sales. Island Records had U2 on the label. They didn't need Local H. They pressured Basso to drop the duo, considering it a sunk cost. Fortunately, he wasn't so sure. It seemed like he really believed in the band. He insulated them from the noise, too. Lucas was quoted as saying, I don't think we realized how precarious our position was at the time. We thought, yeah, these guys are going to give us time to grow. But from things I later heard behind the scenes, everyone was pressuring Basso to drop us. Before the label could make a decision, Basso decided to strike first. He ushered Local H back into the studio to record another album. Spurred on by feelings of inadequacy, Lucas would reunite with Daniels and Hagler to put out As Good as Dead. When they released it, Island Records informed Lucas that they would need to sell 100,000 copies for them to remain on the label. It would sell 3 times that amount, appearing on the charts and spawning a hit song that you've most certainly heard. For a while, Local H would be safe, but that's a story for another day. Right now, we're looking back at their debut, remember? Nowadays, I think the album is held alongside other Local H albums with a certain amount of reverence, but that reverence comes in smaller doses for Ham-Fisted. I found various Reddit threads singing its praises, including a nice write-up by Tragic Girl 13 on the grunge subreddit, as well as getting some recognition 3 years ago in a Band of the Week thread on the Queens of the Stone Age subreddit, written by moderator House of Suns. Users on music review websites are also on the side of ham-fisted, it seems, with it sporting mostly favorable ratings around the 3.5 out of 5 mark wherever you look. The only real decriers of it I found were Greg Kot, who gave the album a 2 out of 5 rating in the Rolling Stone Album Guide, which is correct about as often as Sylvia Browne, and Eduardo Rivadavia on AllMusic, who wrote that this very original setup didn't initially translate into the music, and though their first album, 1995's Ham-Fisted, possessed some catchy riffs and choruses, most of the material stuck way too close to Nirvana for comfort. There it is again, the comparison to Nirvana. Is it fair? Based on what I've read, I'm heading into the album expecting Kurt Cobain to jump out at me, like it's Five Nights at Freddy's. So, without further ado, let's go back in time and take a look at Local H's first record, Ham-Fisted. I'll spoil my thoughts for you. It's great. Track 1 is Feed, and it serves as an excellent appetizer. As soon as it begins, we're greeted by a hulking bass line that persists throughout the song from start to finish. Daniels showcases his powerful drumming style with hard hits that hurt my hands just listening to, punctuated by frequent cymbal crashes, which serve as brilliant catharsis and contrast well with the soft tapping of hi-hats, which in Feed's case alternates with the animalistic bashing throughout the song. Lucas's guitar screams as much as he does, with a distortion-heavy solo soaring above the noise to attack the listener and usher in the second half. Those early doubts as to Lucas's vocal ability go right out the window here. He can scream. It's not easy to make a song out of just 1 or 2 lines of lyrics like he did here on Feed, but the increasingly violent delivery of them gives each repetition a different feeling as Lucas's anger reaches its peak at the end. There is no fade on this track, nor will there be on most to follow. It ends definitively. Initially, Feed was not a favorite of mine, but with each listen, it grew on me until I could definitely say, yeah, man, this song rips. Funnily enough, I think my thoughts on this song could be expanded to describe the entire album. At first listen, it may not sound extraordinary. Maybe that's why it failed to garner an audience at its original time of release. Much great art does. Feed, like what's to follow, is more of a grower than a shower. Give it some room. However, the second song, Cynic, is a standout exception to that statement. This song most definitely shows off. The intro thunders right from the jump. While Lucas asserts on Feed, I don't need my ego fed, the hook here begs to differ. An ego might not be so bad, it could be something I should have. It's good to hear he came around. The riffage and drumming are just as aggressive as they are catchy. When Local H themselves said that Cynic was the first song that was definitely them, I couldn't agree more. Lucas's vocals shine brilliantly here. It goes to show just how much he'd been able to mature and develop his skills over the previous 4 years. A noisy, angst-ridden breakdown occurs midway through. Here comes the doubt again, sandwiched right in the middle of songwriting that carries elements of pop sensibility in a punky attitude. Speaking of sandwiches, Mayonnaise and Malaise follows the fast-paced Cynic with a much more light-hearted vibe in its riffage. It's equally catchy, though in a different sort of way, with lyrics capturing the malaise of working a job just to get by. I don't want to work no more. I'm gonna kill the next customer who walks in the door, Lucas complains, channeling his frustrations from working at Subway. True story. While Local H often gets lumped in with the grunge movement, I think this song especially showcases what's to come from the band later in their career. A less pigeonholed alt-rock sound. User comes in to bring the album back to where it started, with an instant kick-in-the-teeth drum fill which cues into a heavy, methodical riff. Lucas's joint guitar and bass ability swings, stomps, and struts throughout the track in a malicious way. The song is as dark lyrically as it is musically, with Lucas boasting, I used her right, oh yeah, which shows off his ability to write not just self-loathing tracks, but other loathing tracks too, which will be showcased throughout his career. Much like other songs on this album, User leans into the noise, with fuzz and distortion filling the ears of listeners in just a wonderful way. Manipulator rides off User's tails, carrying over that dark, dirty riffage with evil lyrics. I never said I wouldn't lie to you. Lucas uses some sort of vocal filter, and again proves his songwriting chops alongside Daniels by taking a handful of lines, a handful of sounds, and stretching them out into a song that doesn't drag, which echoes back to what they did on Feed. Bag of Hammers then switches pace again, coming in fast. Lucas's lyrics ooze hate, and his delivery sells it. It features one of my favorite lines off the record, being, "I've made a meal, the first course is crow, choke it down 'cause you suck." It's full of a sort of adolescent aggression that could come across as almost juvenile, but I don't necessarily mean that in a derisive way. The song is short, aggressive, and sticks in the mind. If the album continued this pace, I could see that it might start to grate. With 6 tracks remaining, you might expect more of the same. Fortunately, Scott Rock comes in at number 7 to interrupt the darkness, the dirt, the muck, the grime, with a shockingly sweet change of pace. Lucas's vocals mellow out to deliver a raw, vulnerable message of optimism, which is relatively rare for an album of this era and scene. "I've never been this naked, I don't think I could fake it. It's as I've feared, I don't feel scared, I'd trick you if I did. I believe in someone, I believe in ones I love." Midway through the piece, Lucas delivers an emotionally soaring piece of guitar work that stands out brilliantly on an album populated by dark cynicism. His final shout comes across as triumphant, in such a way that it could have acted as a finale. Scott Rock is the first song off the album I would describe as beautiful, and has become a favorite of mine upon revisiting it. That sweetness can't last forever, though. And with Sports Bar, we're greeted by an ominous intro that slides into another gritty tune filled with loathing. The fuzzy riffs and hard hits on the drums return, alongside some interesting guitar work by Lucas at several points in the song. This track also houses some of my favorite lyrics, "I'm a hack, you're a smoker's cough," which is a fun bit of wordplay that's clever enough I wonder how I didn't think of it. Meanwhile, "and every time when things are great, I don't know why I detonate," is a woefully relatable line of angst that's delivered well. The final minute 40 or so is especially good, with some especially excellent drumming by Daniels. Chicago Fanfare 93 sucker punches you with about 38 highly aggressive seconds of listening, beginning the song with the chorus before going into a verse that contrasts it with a softer, almost playful demeanor. Then, before you can process it, bam! It's back to that aggressive chorus. Then back to the poppier verse, which wouldn't sound out of place on Local H's later album, Pack Up the Cats. The verse repeats with a more aggressive delivery, which is then repeated again in an even louder, more musically dense fashion. It's a catchy tune with some great bass work, great drumming, and great guitar, all working so well together. The song's interesting structure helps it to stand out, not just on the album, but within the genre itself. Strict 9 jams out to start, before unrolling into a slower, heavier song with a great full sound. The chorus particularly stands out, with an interesting delivery in terms of its melody that causes it to stick in the ears. There's a stripped-down reprieve in the middle of the song before it kicks back into gear. Lucas's vocals stand out on this track as well. I think Strict 9 could have effectively served as the finale of the album, but Local H still has 2 more songs for us. Skid Marks is yet another employer of an excellent build-up. Lucas's aptitude for the bass is on display before the song abruptly launches into a track that's just great for the mosh pit. Much of Lucas's vocals here have a filter on them, which muffles the lyrics as he sings them. What can be heard loud and clear is the repeated screams of "no, no, 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 no," which only become more violent as the song goes on until they reach their peak at the end, resulting in a sequence in which you can picture destruction. Daniel's already violent drumming style serves the song brilliantly, punctuating the musical equivalent of a mental breakdown, and Lucas's out-of-breath screams serve as a sort of cathartic crescendo. The album concludes with the track Girlfriend, which is a surprising choice for a finale and could be seen as a surprising choice for inclusion on the record at all. With a stripped-down sound and a soft, sensitive approach, Lucas serenades the titular riot girl he's fallen for in such a way that could be read as tongue-in-cheek or earnest. "I'm in love with a riot girl. I'm a boy and I know that that's bad. I don't care if she makes me be quiet. I'm in love and I think it's a riot." Every time I thought about this album and looked at the track listing, my eyes would dart to the bottom and see Girlfriend, and my knee-jerk reaction was that it's a song that could have been cut. 4 times I've listened to Ham-Fisted over the course of the past week, and not once have I skipped this song. Truth be told, it's a great change of pace from everything that precedes it. After a near non-stop 45-minute sonic assault consisting of hard-hitting drums, cymbal crashes, screams, distortion, heavy bass, and guitar fuzz, this sweet little ode comes in and cleanses the palate. On its own, it may not be a particularly remarkable song, but in the context of the album, I think its charm is enhanced. Lucas is in love with a riot girl, and I'm in love with Ham-Fisted. When I decided to write this review, I of course listened to the record from start to finish. As the songs went by, I wrote down my thoughts, and at the end, I looked at the score it accumulated with a sense of disbelief. That can't be right. It's not that good, is it? And so I listened to it again and again, looking for reasons to lower my overall rating. But I couldn't find any. The album is mixed well, which should be expected, given Hagler's impressive resume. He did an excellent job ensuring that the duo was given equal opportunity to shine. Lucas and Daniels wrote all the songs themselves, and I have to give major credit for their grasp on song structure. The short songs aren't too short, the long songs aren't too long. At no point does the album feel like it's rushing or dragging. Lucas's lyrical style is, as many have noted, about as subtle as a bag of hammers. And that's not a bad thing. Quite the contrary, I love it. At times, it's that pure 90s angst you'd expect from an album of the genre. However, the times when he narrates from a darker perspective, as well as the times when he exposes heartfelt authenticity, are my favorites. It helps make the band stand out from many others whose studios tried to make happen during the post-Nirvana era.
Yeah, we love to be compared to Nirvana.
Speaking of Nirvana, I have to address the negative creep in the room. Time and time again, Local H is compared to Nirvana, and Ham-Fisted is often called their Bleach.
Yeah, we love to be compared to Nirvana.
Local H themselves said the record is raw, grainy, and gets written off as a Nirvana rip. It's true that we have yet to fully digest our influences. Any record that starts off with a song like Feed is practically begging to be compared to Bleach. Both of these records are debut albums from bands in the grunge era, and both are in fact much rougher around the edges than their successors would be. So maybe it's a natural comparison. To me, that's where the similarities stop. Daniel's style is distinct, far more in your face than Grohl's. Lucas's riffage is similarly distinct from Cobain's, and while both may scream their throats out and have their guitars scream alongside them, it doesn't come across as the former aping the latter. Did they listen to Nirvana? Well, of course they did. Bleach came out when they were in high school. They would have been about 20 years old when Nevermind dropped, and I don't think anyone between the North and South Pole escaped Smells Like Teen Spirit. I'd bet money they like Nirvana, and I feel pretty safe in that bet too, being that they dressed up as them to do a Halloween concert. But to simply say Ham-Fisted is Local H's Bleach and leave it there leaves a bad taste in my mouth. To me, these two records stand alongside each other as peers from the grunge-influenced alt-rock scene. Maybe I'm the one taking crazy pills. Maybe my ears aren't working quite right after listening to so much feedback for a week straight. Maybe I'm just a die-hard Local H fan. But when I listen to this album, I don't hear something derivative. I hear songs with interesting structures, catchy hooks, catchier riffs, and a fat fucking sound. Joe Daniels is an animal. Scott Lucas is a legend. And these songs help prove it. Ham-Fisted, while being a great debut for Local H, would unfortunately forecast their fate in the music industry by being under-noticed, underrated, and underappreciated. Although, while I say that, they are closing in on 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify thanks to consistently putting out good releases for the past 35 years. And although Daniels hasn't been a member of the group since 1999, aside from a brief reunion in 2016, even teaming up with Matt Garcia again to bring the original trio together on stage in Portland, you'll find a band worth listening to. Maybe I'm overrating it. Maybe I don't care. Ham-Fisted is a damn good album. 9 out of 10. Hey there, this is my outro. So, thank you so much for watching this. I've never actually done a video essay before, or even an album review. This is totally new for me, pretty much. Aside from, like, little pieces here and there, I guess, but nothing like this. I mean, this is mammoth. Let me know what you think of Local H. Let me know what you think of Ham-Fisted. Let me know what you think of me and this video. I really appreciate you watching to the end. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit like. It would really help me out. There are going to be more videos like this on the way. Next month, we're looking at a couple more anniversaries of albums, and I know I'm technically like a day or two late with this one, depending on when it goes up. I got a little behind schedule and did not really know how to manage my time too well. Like I said, first time doing this. Haven't really written a proper essay that like used research and shit like that since like college, you know, which is a while ago. But it was a lot of fun. Local H is one of my favorite bands. I'll talk about them at a later date, no doubt. Next year will be the 30th anniversary of As Good as Dead, which is the album that came out after Ham-Fisted and is one of the best, in my opinion. If I'm still doing these by then, I'll talk about it. But yeah, I've wasted enough of your time. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Take care.